So this video is going to be a little bit different than my normal videos for two reasons. For starters, I usually have a list of bullet points that I want to cover in most videos, especially talking head videos like this. But that will not be the case in this video. I want to go directly from the heart, and in a second you will see why. The second difference is that usually whenever I film videos, especially as we go about touring the USA, I kind of give Nadia some context about where we are before we go so that she'll be mentally prepared to understand the gravity of where we are. But for this particular situation, I felt like it would be better to kind of capture her authentic reaction in real time so that we can see how impactful this understanding will be on her mind. That said, a few days ago, we were driving through Connecticut. I don't know if you remember this, but as we were driving through Connecticut, I saw a sign, a road sign that said Sandy Hook. And I said, wow, Sandy Hook Elementary is the school where I believe 20 plus children, elementary school children, ages 6 through 8, as well as a few teachers, were killed. They were killed inside of that school by a lone gunman. And I think right after I told you that, in passing, I mentioned that all of these school shootings started with one school shooting in particular. Right now, we are sitting at a table right next to Columbine High School, which was ground zero for this school shooting thing. I noticed your mood just changed as I told you that. Right before I turned the camera on, she was talking about how beautiful it is. And truthfully, this is a beautiful area. I mean, there are parks and tennis courts. I don't know if all of this is part of the school property, but it's a very, very beautiful area. You can even see the mountains off in the distance. But 13 people died here. April 20th, 1999, 13 people were killed by two gunmen who actually attended this school right here. So when I was in middle school, we had this thing called Rachel's Challenge. And the essence of Rachel's Challenge, do you know what Rachel's Challenge is, by the way? No. The essence of Rachel's Challenge was and is that you commit random acts of kindness. And when you would commit a random act of kindness, or when someone would commit a random act of kindness on you, you would write it down on a piece of paper and you would add it to this big chain link thing made of paper that we had created. And at the time, we kind of knew why they made us do it. It was because it was a tribute to the first victim of the Columbine High School shooting, which was Rachel Scott. It was this, I think, 16, 17-year-old girl, something like that, who was the first victim of the shooting. And actually, she was sitting somewhere outside. I don't know where or how close it was to where we're sitting. Might have been on the other side of the school, but she was eating lunch outside when she was shot and killed by Eric Harris and or Dylan Klebold. I don't know if I said their names correctly. But the point that I'm making is that the things that happened here on that one day created a ripple effect that affected the way that I went through my schooling process all the way in Texas. And actually, I think I mentioned in the video talking about the differences between Dutch schools and American schools that we had to wear IDs to school, and you didn't, right? No. At your Dutch schools. We had to wear IDs, these lanyards with our student ID card at the end of them, and if we didn't wear them to school, we had to pay money to get a temporary ID. And they were serious about this. They were super, super serious. Now granted, I don't know how this would correlate with school safety because, again, the people who committed the school shooting here went to the school. They were active students, so I don't really see the correlation there, but that's besides the point. The point is, the things that happened here affected schools nationwide. And that was the first widely publicized mass school shooting. Again, 13 people died, primarily students. I want you to imagine, because I know that the majority of my audience is old enough to have teenage children. I want you to imagine for a second receiving that call. Just think about receiving that call where maybe you told your kids have a great day, or maybe you didn't even get to talk to them before they went to school. Maybe you were already at work and you didn't see them that morning, and you get that call later in the day. Just imagine that for a second. Really visualize it. Even pause the video and just think about this. At least 13 parents got that call that day. Really think about that. And I was actually looking at the Wikipedia kind of play-by-play of what happened during that shooting, and it lasted almost 1 hour. So imagine being one of the students in the school, not knowing what the fuck is going on. You're just hearing shots, you don't know where they're coming from, you don't know who's doing the shooting, and you don't know why. For all you know, the US is under attack by some foreign country.
Yeah.
You don't know what's going on. And then on top of that, thankfully, only 13 people died, because actually, as I was reading through the play-by-play, I found out that the two perpetrators initially wanted to set off bombs in the school cafeteria during the busiest hour. So, I mean, the death toll would have been in the hundreds had that happened. But why am I even making this video? As we pulled into the Anytime Fitness parking lot that we slept in last night here in Columbine, we noticed that there was a gun store literally right next door to the Anytime Fitness. You can go and look on Google Street View for yourself and you will see it. It was called Tactical 4 or something like that, where they sold guns, knives, ammunition, things of that nature. And honestly, it surprised me. It surprised me that they would have a gun store in a city where something like that happened. And it continues to surprise me every single day that Americans are so averse to gun control. Now, you're Dutch, born and raised in the Netherlands, in Europe. Obviously, European people have a much different view about gun control. So, what do you think the best solution would be for stopping these school shootings that continue to happen, or even just these mass shootings in general? Because they don't just happen in schools, but obviously, when you have people who are teenagers, or like in Sandy Hook, you have people who are 7 to 8 years old being literally slaughtered, you have to imagine that there's something you can do to, at the very least, alleviate the issue. So what do you think, from a European standpoint, is the best solution?
I mean, it would make sense that they would have some kind of gun control in place.
Yeah.
Because if you take away the weapons, then, yeah, they would have less accessibility to do that. But then again, because they already allowed people to just buy guns and stuff, it's like, I don't know how well it could even work to do gun control, because I don't know if they could still get it somewhere, or if they already have it, how are you gonna like regulate that? People already have guns, how are you gonna make sure that they get rid of them or something? Or
it's a very valid concern, and one that I share as well, because honestly, the conundrum that America is in is that there are already so many guns in circulation, both legal and illegal. In fact, I think, I could be wrong about this, please correct me if I'm wrong, in the Netherlands there are more bikes than people, correct? That's kind of the known statistic.
I think so.
There are more bikes than people in the Netherlands. In America, there are more guns than people. And you have to think about it. There are over 300 million people in the US.
That's
so
crazy.
How do you go about taking these guns back, knowing that some of them are illegal as well? That's something that honestly I don't know how you navigate. I don't know what the logistics of that would be. What I do know is that if you don't figure it out, if we don't figure it out, if the politicians don't figure it out, then there will be many, many more parents receiving those types of phone calls, and there will be many, many more high schools, just like Columbine right here, that will undergo a very similar event. And look, the reason why I mentioned the bomb thing was because a lot of people have this idea, this is kind of one of the biggest justifications for not having gun control in the US. A lot of people share this sentiment that guns don't kill people, people kill people. And it's true. Guns don't just suddenly decide to start shooting people on their own. They require people to kill people with the guns. Someone has to pull the trigger. Now, here's the thing. While it is true that people kill people, guns make it a hell of a lot easier to do so. Because look, these were two high schoolers, 17 and 18 years old. They created all of these bombs, and pretty much none of them detonated. None of them detonated because guess what? They were 17 and 18-year-olds. They don't know how to make bombs. Now, could they have maybe driven their car into a crowd or something like that, yeah. But the point is, it would have been much more difficult for them to kill 13 people without the guns that they had. Now, of course, at 17 and 18, I'm gonna take a wild guess and assume that those guns were not actually theirs. They were illegally obtained by the perpetrators. Whether the guns belong to their parents or elsewhere, doesn't really matter, but...
You have to be 21? Or how old do you have to be to get a gun?
I think it depends on where you're at, and different states have different levels of requirements to obtain a gun. I know that Texas is definitely one of the easiest states to go about getting a gun, which, I mean, hey, you can do gun control, or you can just make all of your students wear IDs. I don't know, maybe that was the best solution, but in my opinion, when I look at Europe and I think about your experience in your schools where you didn't even see any fights growing up, you didn't see any combat or conflict at all within your schools. Our schooling experiences were vastly different. And I grew up in a safe neighborhood, by the way. I went to a safe school, but there were still certain times where there would be threats and people would get arrested and things like that, because those things are taken very seriously, and rightfully so, because the threat is real. The threat is very, very real. So, I mean, to know that 13 people died. In fact, I think the death toll increased to 14 because one of the survivors actually died earlier this year from complications from an injury that she sustained in the attack.
From this year she died?
Yeah. So basically...
From 1999?
Yes. So basically what happened was she got shot and she was paralyzed. And sometime this year, I think it was in February, she had some sort of infection that turned into sepsis within her injury, and she died. She passed away from it.
Damn.
And so they count her as a victim of the attack, which is true. So just knowing that all of these people died at this school, I mean, you have a little sister.
Yeah.
Obviously she's a little older than high school age, but I mean, Rachel Scott had a brother as well. He survived. And what he said was that their last conversation was an argument. I know I'm kind of deviating from the main topic here, but their last conversation was an argument that morning, because I guess one of them was making the other one run late to school or something like that, because they carpooled together. But I mean, just imagine you have a little sister, and just to know that in that moment there's nothing you can do. There's nothing you can do to protect her. You don't know where she is. She's unaccounted for. I mean, that's scary. That's really, really scary. And as a parent, not being able to protect your children. Oh wait, you can. Gun control. That's how you protect your children. Preventative measures. Now again, I don't know how you go about taking all of these guns out of circulation, especially given that a lot of them, I don't know the exact percentage, but a fair portion of them are illegally obtained and untraceable. And also in places like California, I think I mentioned this to you as well, but there's this discrepancy where the criminals are able to obtain guns illegally, but then citizens are not allowed to have guns. So basically you have people running up in people's houses and things like that. And because of the way the self-defense laws are structured, they're more like Europe's self-defense laws, where you don't have the castle doctrine where you can shoot someone for running up in your house. It creates this very big power discrepancy and this power imbalance. So I don't know exactly how you go about navigating that issue, but my issue isn't that we don't know how to fix it, it's that a lot of people don't see a problem at all. That is where the disconnect is for me.
Yeah,
because
that's crazy to me.
People really can read these news articles like this and watch these documentaries about these stories and not see a problem with it. I mean, I just don't get it. I genuinely don't understand.
I don't even understand what the reason is to have a gun. Like, I guess maybe to defend yourself if you were ever assaulted or something. But if there were no guns in the first place, then it would make it harder to be assaulted, and then you wouldn't need a gun to defend yourself. So, I don't know.
Exactly.
But have there never been discussions amongst the politicians how to handle this?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So generally speaking, and I don't want to make this too political because I think this shouldn't really be dependent on which political affiliation you have. This should be a universally understood thing that there is a problem. But generally, the left, which is the liberals, the Democrats, etc., they are more pro-gun control. Whereas the conservatives, the red, the Trump supporters, so to speak, they are anti-gun control. Now, I mentioned this in another video, but I don't want to make snap judgments on people's character just based on who they voted for, because there's a lot more nuance to it than, oh, I want my gun, so I'm going to vote for Trump. It's a lot deeper than that for a lot of people. Hopefully. I really, really hope it is. But I just don't understand the line of thinking of people who know that these things are happening. It's not like they're denying that these things are happening, because, I mean, they're literally happening right in front of our faces. People see these things happening and they still don't see a problem. I just don't understand it. I really genuinely don't understand it. And you made a great point about people wanting guns for self-defense, but really the real issue, if we're being honest, the actual underlying issue, or the issues that I see beyond even gun control, are, for starters, a mental health issue. Because if Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold don't have the mental problems that they have, or if those problems were spotted earlier, they don't shoot up this school. They don't set all those pipe bombs in the cafeteria, and maybe they're still alive today, and everyone else that they killed is also alive, and everyone's thriving. But also economic inequality. A lot of America's gun violence is not Columbine style school shooting massacres in fairly good areas like this. I mean, we've been kind of driving around Columbine, and it's a pretty nice area, more or less. A lot of America's gun violence is actually in those lower income communities like Gerttown, the place that I took you to in New Orleans, where people believe that they don't even have the opportunity to escape from that situation, so they just completely crash out, and they never learn how to regulate their emotions because they only have one parent in the household and they basically have to raise themselves. So I think that those are the core issues, but gun control is at least somewhat of a stopgap where you can say, okay, let's go ahead and do something about this, and at the very least make it harder for people with mental health issues. While we figure out how to solve that crisis and the economic inequality crisis, let's make it harder for the crash outs to crash out. And will there still be people who die? Absolutely. People die everywhere. But I guarantee you that those two teenage boys would not have killed 13 people if they only had knives at their disposal. We saw they tried using the bombs. They don't know how to make bombs. They're 17 years old, 18 years old. So I don't know if you have anything else you want to say about that. I know that, again, I kind of killed the mood. I mean, it was a really, really nice area. As you can see, it's a really, really nice area. But
I mean, I'm glad it didn't, just destroy the mood of this whole place.
Yeah.
And that it didn't leave, like, that impact where people would be just terrified to go out.
Yeah.
But, yeah, something needs to be done about this.
Absolutely. And I will say, as we were in the gym and I was seeing all of these people, a lot of them were older people. A lot of them have probably been in this town for decades. And I'm sure most of those people that we saw today in the gym were here when this happened. And in the back of my mind, the whole time, all I could think about was, I wonder if any of these people lost somebody in this shooting. And I almost wanted to ask someone how the shooting affects them to this day, but I didn't want to uncover any wounds or anything like that. But I mean, the odds are we see these people out here, out and about, playing tennis or volleyball or whatever else. I'm sure at least one person that we've seen today was directly affected by the shooting. I'm sure some of them maybe even went to high school here when the shooting happened and were present when the shooting happened. People here seem like they're happy. They seem like they're joyous and just out and about living life. But I know deep down, a lot of these people are probably still messed up. I mean, that sort of thing does not leave you at all.